Hey everyone, Miss Michaela here from the Downtown Huntsville Library, and today I am here for Ask a Librarian, but it's going to be a little bit different because for today we have a special guest, Mr. Joe Iacuzzo, local dinosaur enthusiast, and a professional who's going to tell us about various dinosaur experiences. So would you like to say a bit about yourself, Mr. Iacuzzo?
I have had the privilege of having the most fun job in the world. I spent 6 years working on the Jurassic Park movies and writing about dinosaurs and dinosaur science for Universal Pictures. And we did a project called the Jurassic Park Institute that provided teaching tools and educational programs to students, families, and teachers in schools. And we had over 20 million children and their families participate in that project.
That does sound incredibly fun. I'm kind of jealous.
It was fun. My job was going and playing on the set of Jurassic Park films every once in a while.
Now you're just rubbing it
with
in.
the big robot dinosaurs.
Well, since you brought up the movie, would you like to tell us a little bit about your props before we get started with the questions?
Sure, I brought a few things. This is the toenail of a T-Rex, and I like to show this to people because it gives an idea of scale. And this is actually the bone that was under the actual toenail, so it would have been covered with the same material that your fingernail is made out of, keratin, and it would have been significantly longer. And if you can imagine, he had 3 of these on each of his very large feet. And this is from a specimen named Stan that was about 40 feet long. So that's a good idea of how dinosaurs walked around and how large they were.
It's a spectacular dinosaur name, too.
This has a tie-in to the Jurassic Park movie. This is the killer claw of a raptor dinosaur. Now in the movie you saw the velociraptors, and they were about 5 or 6 feet tall. However, as many children know, and not as many adults, velociraptors were considerably smaller in real life. They were only about the size of a chicken with a long tail. This is from a dinosaur named Utahraptor, and it was actually found during the filming of the first Jurassic Park film in 1993, and it validated Steven Spielberg, the director of the movie, his vision of how large he wanted the raptors to be for the movie. And this was found in Utah, so it's called Utahraptor, and it's the killer claw. And what was neat about it is that these dinosaurs had a big tendon that was wound up tight like a spring, and when it would leap at its prey, this would snap forward, and like this it had a keratin sheath, so it was actually probably about this long and very sharp and pointy, and just sliced the guts open of the animal it was attacking. This is a tooth. This is a real tooth, and all these will be on display here at the library and downstairs above the dinosaur footprint. This is the real tooth of a North African meat-eating dinosaur that lived about 100 million years ago, and its name was Carcharodontosaurus saharicus. And it was a member of the Allosaur family. And this is interesting because a lot of teeth you see of dinosaurs on displays are what are actually the sheds. So it'll be just this part of the tooth. This has the actual root of the tooth. And this was probably one that was growing in to replace a broken or missing tooth in a dinosaur, because they always got new teeth. Unlike us, they were constantly replacing their teeth. And if you look closely, you can feel there are serrations on the edge of the tooth. And I know that you like to touch the real stuff.
I do.
And think that that was in the mouth of a dinosaur 100 million years ago, eating other dinosaurs and maybe some big fish. And this is a oviraptor model, and it's called a maquette. And it's a very special kind of model. This one in particular was made by an artist named Gary Staub, and it was sculpted in the year 2000, and it was used as the guide for the animators of the Disney film Dinosaur. And if you watch the movie, you'll see in one scene there are two of these little guys on a ridge looking down at a nest of the hero of the movie.
Calidar.
And they were going to steal his egg. The name oviraptor means egg stealer. And it was given that name because the first fossil of this dinosaur was found sitting on top of a nest of eggs. And this was found in Mongolia. And they thought, well, this must have been a dinosaur that was stealing the eggs and eating them. In reality, what happened was it was sitting on its own nest of eggs. And we know this because subsequent discoveries, they found the same type of egg, and inside it were the bones of little baby oviraptors. So it was actually protecting its nest, most likely from an approaching sandstorm, which buried it and killed the dinosaur and everything underneath it. And that's how they found it 70-some million years later. So this will be on display here, and it's a one-of-a-kind maquette that really has a cool story behind it.
It does. Also, I love the dinosaur movie. Thank you so much for loaning us pieces from your collection.
People need to see this stuff.
Agreed. Well, do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Sure.
So one of the first questions that we have is, what is the current theory as to why dinosaurs, like the titanosaurs, were so big?
Interesting question. There are actually a number of reasons, and some that are based more on fact and some that are based more on ideas and maybes. So the fact is that during the age of the Earth when dinosaurs roamed, and it was a 160 million year long period from the Triassic up through the end of the Cretaceous, the time span we call the Mesozoic, and there was more oxygen in the air. When there was more oxygen, things got bigger. Plants grew year-round. It was warmer overall. There was for most of the Mesozoic, there was no snow anywhere on the planet.
That sounds amazing.
So it was a year-long growing season. And plant-eating dinosaurs had plenty of food. And so they just kept eating and eating. And like large animals that we see today, the ones that are more successful tend to have more babies. So when the bigger dinosaurs that could escape from the predators had babies, their babies tended to be bigger, and they just kept growing. Another theory that has not been proven is that some dinosaurs, especially the big titanosaurs, the sauropods, the long necks, never stopped growing during their life. And I'm actually working on a project now with some filmmakers. There is a dinosaur that it's kind of the legendary in paleontology history, because there was one bone found that has now been lost. There's record of it being delivered to the American Museum of Natural History in New York, but nobody knows where it is now. It was delivered in the 1870s. And it's called Amphicoelus. And its single vertebra, which would have been like right around here in its back, is 9 feet tall. Or it was 9 feet tall, because we can't find it now. That would have meant it was about a 200-foot long titanosaur.
That's amazing.
But there are dinosaurs that are well over 100, that we have a lot of fossils of, that are over 130 feet long. And then they grew very fast. To avoid being eaten, they probably ate as much as 500 to 1,000 pounds of plants every day, and within a year could grow 20 feet longer than the year before, until they reached a mass that big dinosaurs had a hard time bringing down if they were hunting them.
That's good motivation to grow. So for our next question, what new discoveries have been made from soft tissue or dino mummies finds like Dakota?
I love Dakota. A young man named Tyler Leeson found him. He's a great guy. The issue with Dakota was he didn't have a head. So he was not a complete mummy. There have been two major dinosaur mummy discoveries in the last 100 years. Before that, it was in 1905 that the last major dinosaur mummy discovery was made. That there was actually two of them that year, both by the same man, Charles Sternberg, and they were both found in southwestern Canada. And they were only about 25% of their skin was on their bodies. It was mostly still bone. In 2000, a dinosaur was discovered that was nicknamed Leonardo, and I had the great privilege and pleasure to work on that project. Leonardo was completely covered with its skin when it was discovered, and it had inside of it, because it was completely covered with unbroken skin, there was no way anything got into it. With a specimen like Dakota, you have the concern that things get washed in the hole where its head used to be. And with Leonardo, that was not the case. And if you go to our website, huntsvillescience.org, and go to the page that says Science! You can actually watch the entire documentary we produced about Leonardo. It's called Secrets of the Dinosaur Mummy. It's free, because at Huntsville Science, we like to get people in Huntsville interested in science. And it talks a lot about the life of Leonardo and what science has found about Leonardo. We actually worked with NASA, and we took Leonardo's mummified fossil to the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where we could x-ray him and look inside of him. And we were able to image what we are certain is his liver, and we were able to image what we think could have been his heart. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing that scientists most want to find in any dinosaur is a clear picture of a fossilized heart of a dinosaur. Because if we can find a 4-chambered heart, we know that then it was a warm-blooded animal. And because we know that some dinosaurs most likely became birds, when birds are warm-blooded, that would help prove that theory. But there are so many things about dinosaurs that indicate to us that they were warm-blooded. And you have a book here,
yes,
that I happen to have written, called The Last Day of the Dinosaur Mummy, that is lavishly illustrated, whether you just want to look at great pictures or read some of the science as well. It's a wonderful book that tells a little bit of the story about that dinosaur mummy. An interesting thing about Dakota was that we found a crocodile inside of it. So, next question.
So, for the next question, if you are a dinosaur enthusiast, where in Alabama could you go to see fossils or look for them yourself?
You can go right here to
Absolutely.
the main library in Huntsville, and we have part of my fossil collection here. I know that they have a very few fossils down at in Guntersville at the State Park Lodge. Is it Jackson State has a great fossil collection and program of study there. And I have to admit I'm new enough to Alabama that I'm not sure exactly where is the best place to look. But I can tell you that if you live in Huntsville and you're digging in your backyard, odds are you won't find fossils.
Sadly. I think we're nearing the end of the time that we have. So can I ask you one last question?
Absolutely.
All right. Ooh, which ones? Which ones? Oh, what is your favorite dinosaur myth that has been debunked?
My favorite dinosaur myth that I'm very glad that has been debunked lasted for a lot of years when I was a kid, and that is that dinosaurs were slow and cold-blooded, plotting, and stupid. And since 1986, when a scientist named Dr. Robert Bacher wrote a book called The Dinosaur Heresies, which I'm sure you have in your collection somewhere, he resurrected ideas that existed over 100 years ago about dinosaurs being active, smart, and just very communal. We now know that they lived in herds, that they cooperated. Some of the theories that are shown as fictional things in Jurassic Park movies about them hunting in herds are in all likelihood very true.
That is a nice theory, because it's sad to hear that people thought they were stupid for so long. They survived for millions of years. But thank you so much for coming today, and thank you for sharing your books. Could you hold them both up for us?
This is my book. This is another book you have in your collection.
Yes.
You can find a video on huntsvillescience.org of the author of this book, Dr. Scott Persons.
So check them out and come check out the collection that Mr. Iacuzzo has kindly donated to it, or loaned to us for a little while. And thank you so much for watching this episode. Please like and subscribe.